Welcome back to Mobile Mornings here on FM Talk 106.5. And again, it's one of my favorite times of the month, each month, and time for Law 251 with Tobias and Comer Law. And Desi Tobias is in with us this morning. Desi, thank you so much for coming on again.
Good morning, Dalton. Good to see you again.
Yeah, and it's a special time of year around here, of course, and we'll get into that. But I want to start with something a little more somber. And we've seen this in several instances over the last few months, pedestrian deaths. And it's happened on the interstate. It's happened on some local roads around here. And it's always a tragedy, of course. But this is something that I'm sure you've seen in court cases in the past. And also through that and through living, you've learned some ways to avoid this happening on either side, whether you're the pedestrian or the unfortunate person who's in the vehicle that hits a pedestrian.
Yeah, that's right, and I do see that quite often. We handle a lot of car accident cases and a lot involving pedestrian injuries or deaths, and the law on that area is not what you really think it is, and we know who has the right-of-way at certain times, but the law holds and the rules of the road say that a driver has to pay due care to make sure the roadway is clear, and they actually should anticipate things like an incapacitated person, even a drunk person who's in the roadway. The law also tells us, like, if you're walking as a pedestrian, you're supposed to walk against the traffic. A biker is supposed to ride with the traffic. But regardless of where you are at the time you're hit, a driver can still be held liable for that, even if he's in the right lane and you're not, as a pedestrian.
So, and it's happened to so many of us, whether we're driving to work early in the morning or driving home late at night. And you don't know if that's a bag of trash or clothes or a box or whatever it may be. But it's on you as the driver to slow down. Don't just tear right through it, because you never know who that could actually be a person.
Yeah, that's true. And there's actually a case. I'll tell you about a case that I had myself just recently involving a pedestrian death. But there's what we call a Supreme Court case that tells us what the law is. And it's 20, 30 years old, from a local county. And a woman was driving down the road and saw what she thought was a box in the roadway. And as she got closer without slowing down, she realizes it's two children. And they get up to leave but don't leave in time, and they're killed. The case in that instance said that she should have been aware if something was in the roadway. She at least had knowledge. So there's a question of fact as to whether she's liable for it, or whether she acted reasonably given the knowledge that she had. And that's all of our own worst nightmares, but you need to anticipate who's out there, whether children or whoever, and take due care to avoid it. And even when there's weather conditions, the weather conditions enhance and increase your duty as a driver to make sure that the roadway is safe, even though there may be fog or whatever else obscuring your vision.
And it'd probably be similar. Certain parts of Mobile and Baldwin counties are much more lighted or well lighted than other areas. And we all know those spots that we're worried about. But caution all the time, but especially when you're driving through a dark and populated part of a city, especially.
Yeah, that's right. And the case that I had recently involved a death up on Highway 45. Where someone was hit. He was walking the wrong way. Ultimately, we never knew how he got there. He was from another state and was, happened to be walking there. But it was foggy. The driver said he couldn't see him until it was too late. Well, that was a question of fact. At least he saw him or something like him. And could he have avoided him? Could he have driven more slowly, given the apparently deep fog that was there at the time?
Oh, man. We're talking with Desi Tobias with Tobias and Comer Law this morning, another edition of Law 251. And I want to talk about Mardi Gras and some of those tips here in just a minute. But I do have one more question, because I remember us talking about this a while back. And uninsured motorist coverage actually comes into play in instances like this. And of course, not every pedestrian that gets hit ends up dying. They sometimes suffer some gruesome injuries or maybe get off completely lucky. But you've told me before that uninsured motorist coverage is important, even in instances like this.
Yeah, and that's a great thing about the coverage and the law, which is very favorable. It's good for the public. But the uninsured motorist coverage inures to a person, not a vehicle. So if you're a person and you were injured by an uninsured motor motor or underinsured or uninsured motor vehicle, the coverage will apply. You as a person were hit. It doesn't matter if you were occupying the car that was covered, but it applies to the person. So if that happens, injury from a vehicle, yes, there will be coverage.
Yeah, just another great reason to check out the coverage you currently have to make sure that you are covered for instances like this. And I brought up Mardi Gras. It's that beautiful time of year, but it's also, as we're talking about pedestrian safety, one of the most dangerous times of year if you're downtown or maybe one of the parades across the bay. And there are obvious ways that you can get hurt, by running right out in front of a float, but there's also some other ideas to kind of keep you safe if you're trying to go downtown and have a good time.
Yeah, there is, and again, that's the pedestrian safety at play there. There's tons of pedestrians, 100,000 or so at certain times, but as a pedestrian, you need to be careful. You need to stay away, keep your distance. And, as a driver, if you happen to be in that instance, whether leaving a parade or whatever, you have to always anticipate that somebody could jump out in front of you. Something like that could happen. Something really, in a way, crazy.
Yeah.
Somebody could jump on a float or something, but those things happen, and we want to do our best to avoid something like that.
Yeah, over the decades and decades here in Mobile, I feel like just about everything has happened in one form or fashion at Mardi Gras. Like just the most insane ways that people could find a way to get hurt has probably happened over the years. And as I'm in this time of life where I've got two really young children, when I'm ready, when I have the patience to take them to a big Mardi Gras parade, that's one that I'm thinking about a lot, is keeping them in my eyesight, make sure they don't slip under or through a barricade, because those kids, they might see some beads right out there in the middle they want to go grab.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That you always have to be aware of what's going on. Those people on the floats, they're big. They're not used to driving them. Anything could happen. So, yeah, it's important to be careful. And it's something great about our city, Mardi Gras, but that's what it is. It's to be fun, and at the same time, you got to be aware that something like that could happen.
Yeah, you could be having the greatest time in your life, but one thing happens, and it turns all the way the other way around. Not good. And Desi, I really appreciate you. You've given me so much great information here. The cases you've worked involving pedestrian deaths, I hate it. Every morning I feel like I see another story, every 2 weeks or so where someone gets hit, and some great ideas to keep us safe, and also some of the cases you've worked as well. If this sounds familiar to them, or they have a family member who's experienced something like this and they want to call for a free consultation, you have a number they can call at any time, right?
They can call 251-432-5001.
All right. And the website's fantastic. You have not just information about the firm, Tobias & Comer Law, but you've got all kinds of news articles and information like you've given me today right there for people to check out and even print if they'd like to. And that's TobiasComerLaw.com.
Yeah, that's right.
Desi, appreciate you coming in this morning. Can't wait to talk again whenever you're able to make it back into the studios. But have a great day. Thanks for coming.
All right. Thank you, Dalton. Always good to see you. Always enjoy talking with you.
Hey, same right here.